Hi YouTube. Well, here we are about to look at another incident. Luckily this one did not do a lot of damage to the aircraft. No injuries to the pilot that I'm aware of. Thanks to the pilot for sharing this again. We can all learn a thing or two from these videos. And I always find it really fascinating and interesting seeing what went wrong and trying to analyse what happened. I've got some exciting channel news. We've just started a new online store. pureglide.nz is the web address. Go check it out. And as an opening special, we've got a coupon code that you can use to get 10% off. Use the coupon code LAUNCH. So let's take a look, shall we? See what happened. Alright, here he is at the start of the video. You can see he's 300 feet above the ground, or 100 meters, according to his altimeter. The airspeed, he's doing 100 kilometers an hour, which is about reasonable. This looks like a ASW20 glider. I don't think it's got flaps actually, so it can't be an ASW20. It must be one of the ones without flaps. So from what I understand, this was an aborted winch launch. So you wouldn't normally end up in this situation, this height. Doing a turn here, and right underneath him there is the winch and the start of the runway. Note the windsock on the left there as he goes past. When I first saw this I didn't know where he was landing, but that is the runway going up the hill there. Nice touchdown, rolling up the hill. Unfortunately, he starts making noises because he knows he can't stop.
Grande malheur. Grande malheur.
And that is not a nice sound, hearing your glider being scratched up like that as it enters the bushes. Luckily, no real substantial damage, I'm guessing, except for cosmetic scratches, so could have been a lot worse. So let's take this back here. What's interesting about this particular point is he's too high over the end of the runway there. What's probably happened? He's released from the winch, pushed into wind, but he might not have quite realized how strong the wind was, and he needed to go further and make a bigger circuit, so that at this point he should have been approaching the airfield, not directly over the end of it. It's easy to do when you're punching into wind. It feels like you're going a long way, but then you look down underneath you and you discover actually you haven't gone that far. So very common trap to fall into. As we go along here we can see the windsock, and it's extended. That means it's at least 15 knots of wind, which is quite a big tailwind. That's going to be one of the major factors for this incident. His landing looks pretty good. The airspeed, it's very important to keep an eye on your airspeed as you're landing and not worry about how fast the ground's whizzing past you. He takes a little bit of time to touch down, and it's a shame he didn't touch down just a touch sooner, because that would have made a big difference to the amount of energy. And the real question is, why isn't his wheel brake working? Some gliders, you know, have them at the end of the air brakes, and he's still got his air brakes fully open there, so I think he's trying to use the wheel brake at the end of the air brakes. Some gliders have a squeeze trigger on the stick, like a bicycle brake. So obviously this glider's brakes need to be fixed. It's critical when you're going into a paddock or out landing to have good working brakes so you can stop as quickly as possible. The other unfortunate thing here is it looks like the ground at the top here is, in this right hand corner, is just sloping away, and that won't help stop the roll. You'll just keep on rolling because gliders are pretty heavy, so it requires something to actually stop it going down a hill. amount of energy here is so low, and the bushes caught him, so
Grande malheur. Grande malheur.
more embarrassing than anything else. So let's talk about what kind of things can you do here. What were the main problems? And I think the main problem is just being too close to the airfield. He should have done a bigger circuit, ended up further away, would have had more time to burn off that energy. Trying to descend right over the end of the airfield on this particularly short airfield, it's not a good idea. Landing with a tailwind is obviously not ideal, but he's also landing uphill. Now, if you have the choice, or if you're in a situation where you have to either land uphill and downwind, or downhill and into wind, you always choose uphill. And the reason for that is you'll never stop a glider rolling down a hill. Landing with a bit of extra speed on from a tailwind isn't the end of the world. The other thing that happened here, he's got you can see on the way down he's got the brakes full out, and about here he puts them halfway. He could have left the brakes fully out for longer, and that would have helped burn off some energy. His flare and touchdown, now it's tricky landing on uphill. Quite different to landing on flat, which is what we're normally used to. So for this, ideally he would have touched down a bit sooner, and that would have burnt off more energy more quickly as he was rolling on the ground. Unfortunately, it held off for just a moment or two, longer than it probably needed to. Overall, he kept his airspeed up, which is really important. So he's at least 100 knots here. You can see it drops off a little as he gets lower. Sorry, 100 kilometers an hour. That is 100 kilometers per hour in knots is 55 knots. So with a 15 knot tailwind, you wouldn't want any less than that. So it's good he kept his speed pretty constant and steady all the way down. It's very easy to get into an optical illusion that makes it look like you're going too fast because the ground's whizzing past you. But of course, when you've got a tailwind, that is what will happen. So what other things could he have done? Other than making a bigger circuit, which I think would be the most obvious thing to do, we have a few ways to burn off energy. One of the first is to do a side slip, and we touched on this during the glider crash video recently. But right now he's got brakes full out. If he had done a side slip, put the glider on an angle and come down on an angle, you would burn off more energy than just having the brakes out alone. It means you descend faster, and he would have touched down sooner on the runway, and that might have made all the difference. So that's always an option if you balls up your landing into especially going at an uphill strip or something like that. And I've done it before and been too cramped to the airfield. I use my side slip to get down faster. Once you're on the ground, you only have two real options. One is to use the wheel brake, and obviously if you need a working air brake, which I don't think he had in this case. The only other option is to do what we call a ground loop. Now this is sort of an emergency procedure we can initiate if we see a fence coming up, for example. How it works, you put one wing down on the ground when you've still got a bit of speed on. The drag of that spins the glider around and you come to a skidding halt. And I've had to do it in anger once myself, landing on an airstrip, and I couldn't see the slope of it very well, and I ended up landing downhill, and I had a slight tailwind, and those two things combined meant I just wasn't going to stop before the fence. And the fence was fencing off a ravine, or a gully, we call them in New Zealand. And so if I didn't stop in time, I would have gone through the fence, which probably would have caught me, but there was a risk of going off the edge, off the cliff. So I put the wing down, it dragged on the ground, skidded the glider around, and came to an abrupt halt with about 5 meters spare. So it's a great procedure. You need to do it while you've still got a bit of speed on, otherwise there won't be enough energy to actually spin the glider around and make it skid. And so I think by the time he realised he did have a wing on the ground, but he was going so slowly and just rolling down the hill, it barely made any difference. It wasn't enough to spin him round. So really you'd want to initiate your ground roll at about this point. Still going full speed. Right now he could put the wing down. I think he did to some extent because he could see the car and the other people up there, so he didn't want to go near them. Alright, well, thanks for watching. Much appreciated. If you enjoyed this, give us a like. Really helps the channel. And subscribe if you can. Check out our new online store, pureglide.nz. I'd love to hear what you think of the designs. Alright, thanks for watching. We'll catch you next time.